Hi guys, so it's come to my attention that a lot of people are unaware of how AP caps in BDO work for grind zones, and I thought I'd make a quick guide on it. So the first thing you need to know is that your sheet AP, which is your displayed AP, so your gear score, let's say it's 370, is completely irrelevant. What matters is the total AP, which I will show you later on how to see what your total AP is in-game. But for the first thing that I need to explain is what is the initial 2% value? Now, the initial 2% value is something in BDO that basically says if you are below that hidden AP, so your total AP, you will only deal 2% damage to mobs that have higher AP requirements. So to show this, the best thing to do is to go to a website called Garmoth.com, which I will link down below. Especially if you're a new player, you'll want to start using this website relatively frequently anyways. And for all the veteran players or players who have been playing for longer who might know the website already, this is how you can check the initial 2% value for every grind zone. So once you're on Garmoth, you can see there's a bunch of different tabs on the top. And the one that's relevant is Monster AP Caps, this one right here. So once you click on that, it will show you for every single grind zone what the initial 2% value is, which is the first column here, which means that you're only doing 2% damage to the mobs if you are in this range. So you just search up the grind zone you are thinking of going to, and as long as you are above the initial 2% value, so as long as your total AP, which I will show you how to see afterwards, is in this 100% bracket, then you can grind there without losing damage just based on how much AP you have. Now, the last column is soft cap. And the soft cap column means that any AP that you have above the 100% value will only do 5% extra damage. So of your AP, you have the initial 2% value, which you need to exceed to actually deal more than 2% damage to the mobs. Then you have a 100% range, where you deal 100% of your damage to the mobs. And then the soft cap range, anything above the 100% will only deal 5% of your usual PvE damage. So this is how you can identify basically how much AP you specifically need for each grind zone. Now, the very important difference, though, is you might think, oh, but I can see the recommended AP in-game. The recommended AP in-game is very different from the AP that you actually need to grind the zone. The recommended AP is just what Pearl Abyss are suggesting you have to grind that zone. It is like basically efficient to grind there at that AP. Whereas if you're lower than that, it is less efficient to grind there. This doesn't mean by any means, though, that you cannot grind there or that it is not better to grind there than at a lower AP zone. Let's take the Adania spots as an example. So when you look at the Therion Castle on Garmoth, you can see right here that the top is, like, the max AP is 1595, but the minimum AP requirement is 1356, which gives it a very high range of AP that you can actually use to grind there. If we look into the game, we can see, so first of all, on default, it will probably say this. This is your sheet AP, as I was saying before. Your sheet AP is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is when you click on this little button that says View Total Stats, you want to click on that, and you see two numbers now. You see recommended AP, total stats, which is 1565, and effective limit, which is 1595. So the effective limit is, again, the max AP that is 100% effective, and everything past that is only 5% effective. This will always be the same on Garmoth as it is in-game. The recommended AP, however, is much higher than the minimum AP requirement for each spot. So it is not an issue to go to Therion Castle to grind there if you have anything above 1356 AP. Now, you might be asking, how on earth do I see how much total AP I have if I'm not in that window? When you go to your inventory, you will want to say Stat Display Settings. If it is on Gear Score, you will see your sheet AP. Whereas if you go and click on total stats, you can see what it is with extra AP against monsters when that's ticked. And then you can choose species damage, which will tell you how much specific damage to specific mob types you do. Now, there are 4 mob types in the game. There's Camasylvia, there's demi-humans, there's humans, and there's Adania. There are also those 4 different types of harmony drafts that you can use. Those will give you more AP against every single specific monster type. Familiarize yourself with where you're grinding and what monster type you will be farming. So if we go to Adania monster, we tick this. Instead of no species damage, we tick extra AP against Adania monsters. And you can see that now I have 1851 AP. Now you will always want to be looking at the AP of the weapon that you use most. It's a bit different for Ascension classes, but in theory, in theory, it is Awakening looks at Awakening stat, Succession looks at Succession stat. Now you might be wondering, okay, but what about my DP? So DP is interesting because the way they have designed the spots at this point, especially the newer spots, you should be able to grind there at whatever DP you feel comfortable grinding there. You will not feel significantly more tanky just because you have armor upgrades. But yeah, in total, all I can say to it is don't rely on the recommended AP that is in-game to decide where you want to grind. Efficiency-wise, anything that's like 60 to 80 AP, total stat AP, below the recommended AP should be more than fine to grind at those spots. When you get to the lower end of the initial, when you get to the lower end of the 100% valued AP, it won't be as efficient to grind there. Which is obvious because you just don't have as much AP, but you're still doing 100% damage. So it's up to you guys where you want to grind. Keep in mind though that anything above the effective limit will only be 5% more than what you're doing at the moment. And keep in mind that if you're below the initial 2% cutoff, then you will be doing absolutely no damage whatsoever. I hope this helped.